Now, classic cinema can sometimes feel like quite an intimidating mountain to take on. Over a century's worth of films, studios, stars and genres, but once you start to explore it, you'll discover a world full of great storytelling that's funny, exciting, emotional, visually inventive, and sometimes surprisingly modern. Now, these 10 films weren't just products of their time, they shaped the language of the movies that we know today. Now, whether you're discovering Golden Age Hollywood for the first time or looking to build a solid foundation as a classic film fan, starting with the right movies makes all the difference. The trick is choosing the films that feel timeless, accessible and rewarding. Now, that's hopefully exactly what this list offers. We're looking at 10 essential films spanning silent comedy, technicolor fantasy, noir, musical, western, suspense and romantic drama that together will give you a nicely rounded introduction to classic Hollywood. These aren't just historically important, they're genuinely entertaining movies. The great entry points that show how rich, bold and fun early cinema can be. Now, by the time you've watched these 10, you'll hopefully have a strong handle on the tones, the genres and the stars that define the Golden Age. Now, of course, this is only 10 movies, the beginner's kit, if you like, and I've put it in chronological order too, just to save argument, and I'd love to know which films you would have chosen. But first, let's take a look. Now, Charlie Chaplin's The Gold Rush is one of those rare silent films that I think can still win over first-time viewers of silent film, and I don't want this list to be homework cinema, and so I've chosen a lively, inventive movie here, full of personality and one that's surprisingly emotional. Now, Chaplin's little tramp character here wanders into the icy Yukon in search of gold, but the film's far less about treasure and far more about the absurdity of human survival. Chaplin wrings enormous humour out of just simple visual ideas like cooking and eating his own shoe, and mixes them with surprisingly delicate moments too. It's kind of a movie that leaves you grinning one minute and unexpectedly moved the next. Now, watching The Gold Rush today gives beginners the perfect entry point to silent storytelling. Chaplin could tell you just about everything through only his body language, his timing and his rhythm, proving that you don't really need dialogue to get across the range of emotions on display here. And to get arty-farty, this film is also a masterclass in early cinematic craft. Crazy camera placements, ultra precise visual gags and strong beats that still feel quite modern. If you've ever been nervous about dipping into silent films, The Gold Rush is the ideal starting place. It's charming, clever and endlessly rewatchable. So, of course, few films have captured the collective imagination like The Wizard of Oz. Even if you've somehow never watched it in full, you already know the songs, the characters and the iconic moments. Yet experiencing it from beginning to end, especially as a newcomer to classic film, is one of cinema's rare treats. Judy Garland's performance here as Dorothy anchors the entire film with that wide-eyed wonder, and that transition from sepia-toned Kansas to the retina-scorching Technicolor world of Oz remains one of the most magical visual shifts in film history. Now, what I think makes this film ideal for beginners is how well it blends studio spectacle with emotion. The sets, costumes and musical numbers remain iconic, but it's those timeless themes of home and courage, friendship and self-discovery that don't seem to age despite it being released on the eve of World War II. Now, if you're new to film noir, The Maltese Falcon is probably the ideal starting point. With film noir trademark shadowy lighting, sharp dialogue, a twisting plot and morally ambiguous characters, the film practically defines the genre. Now, Humphrey Bogart here, in one of his most iconic roles, plays private detective Sam Spade, a man who navigates lies, danger and shifting allegiances with his usual stoic charm. Now, from the moment he steps onto the screen, you understand why he became synonymous with the noir hero. He's world-weary, smart and never fully trusts anyone. Now, what's impressive today is how tightly constructed the plot of this movie is. There's not really an ounce of fat on it. Every line, glance and gesture serves a purpose. John Huston's direction in his directorial debut, no less, is surprisingly modern, and the film's mystery still works on first-time viewers. But beyond the plot, The Maltese Falcon introduces beginners to the feel of classic Hollywood. Watching it now, you understand why noir became one of the most influential genres in film history, and why Bogart remains one of cinema's great screen presences. So, of course, few films carry as much reputation as Citizen Kane, often labelled the greatest film ever made. And for newcomers, that can sound intimidating, and obviously that's an almost impossible reputation to live up to. But the beauty of Kane is that it's surprisingly engaging, accessible and visually stunning. Now, Orson Welles tells the story of a media tycoon here, Charles Foster Kane, through this puzzle-like structure, moving back and forth in time as a reporter attempts to uncover the meaning behind his final word, Rosebud. Now, this fractured storytelling still feels quite modern, and Wells's bold cinematography, all low angles, deep focus, overlapping dialogue, still seems fresh. Now, what makes Kane ideal for beginners isn't just all of its technical innovation, but the emotional punch that it delivers. Beneath all the backslapping and grandeur lies a story about ambition, loneliness, ego, and the price of trying to control the world. Now, Welles himself, amazingly only 25 when he made it, gives a performance filled with both vulnerability and ferocity. You don't need a film degree to appreciate Citizen Kane. You just need to let the story unfold. Now, by the end, you'll understand not only Kane's downfall, but why this film reshaped the art of filmmaking. Now, Casablanca is one of those rare films that manages to be both one of the most romantic movies ever made and one of the most effortlessly cool movies ever made. Now, set in a city teeming with refugees, spies, and opportunists during World War II, it tells the story of Rick Blaine, a cynical nightclub owner played to perfection by Humphrey Bogart. Now, when his former lover Ilsa, played by Ingrid Bergman, walks back into his life, Rick's forced to confront his feelings and decide between personal happiness and a higher cause. Now, what makes Casablanca such a perfect beginner's film is its balance of everything that classic Hollywood did best. You've got the romance, suspense, humour, memorable supporting characters, and that morally charged drama. The dialogue is almost second to none here. It's endlessly quotable. The pacing's pitch perfect, and the emotional beats still land without feeling stuffy and dated. And Casablanca manages to mix intimate moments between the leads with the backdrop of the Second World War and universal themes of good versus evil. It delivers a story about sacrifice and lost love and hope in the face of the chaos that was unfolding across the world at the time. Now, if you're getting into classic movies, then a film that peels back Hollywood's glamorous surface and exposes the industry's darker underbelly is essential viewing. And Sunset Boulevard is no sentimental love letter to the golden age of movies. It's a sharp, haunting, and quite eerie story about fame, obsession, and delusion. And William Holden here plays Joe Gillis, a struggling screenwriter who becomes entangled with Norma Desmond, a faded silent film star who refuses to accept that her era has passed. Now, Gloria Swanson's performance here is pretty mesmerising, a grand, tragic figure clinging desperately to the spotlight. What makes Sunset Boulevard so compelling for beginners is its mixture of film noir style and psychological drama. Now, the voiceover narration, the moody lighting, and the elegant pacing will draw you in, but it's the film's themes that still resonate, especially in today's celebrity-obsessed culture. Now, this movie shows the golden age from an entirely different angle, one that must have been very bold and daring for its time. It's a perfect introduction to the darker, more complex side of classic Hollywood, and a reminder that the studio system produced not only happy-go-lucky escapist entertainment, but deeply introspective works too. Now, sticking with the movies about the movie business theme, few films will capture the joy of filmmaking quite like Singing in the Rain. Now, even if you think you're not a fan of musicals, this one has a way of winning people over, I think. The film takes place during Hollywood's transition from silent pictures to talkies, so we do get a slice of film history in there too. And it blends comedy, romance, and mind-boggling choreography into one package. Now you get Gene Kelly's charisma on show here in every frame, along with Donald O'Connor's physical comedy, which is quite jaw-dropping in places, and of course Debbie Reynolds bringing a much-needed warmth and charm to the role of aspiring actress Kathy Selden. Now, what makes Singing in the Rain perfect as an introduction to the classics, or just the musical genre, is its combination of humour, heart, and just pure kinetic energy. Now, the musical numbers here feel alive in ways that many modern movies can't hope to match, especially that legendary title sequence, which remains one of the most joyful and famous moments in cinema history. Now, the movie is also a cheeky introduction to how Hollywood actually works, poking fun at the very industry that created it. Watching it today, you'll understand not only why musicals were so beloved, but how inventive and imaginative Golden Age filmmaking in general could be. Now, if you are going to get into classic cinema, then at some point you will come across one Alfred Hitchcock, and his 1954 thriller Rear Window is a masterclass in tension, character, and sheer visual storytelling. The premise is a beautifully simple one. Confined to a wheelchair with a broken leg, photojournalist Jeff, played by James Stewart, spends his days watching the lives of his neighbours through their windows. When he believes he witnesses a murder, the film unfolds into a mystery that keeps you guessing until its final moments. And the entire movie takes place from Jeff's perspective, which creates an immersive and sometimes quite uncomfortable feeling that pulls you in immediately. Now, what makes Rear Window perfect for newcomers is that it's pretty ageless, other than, of course, the absence of mobile phones. It feels like it could take place today. It's Hitchcock, so of course the pacing's tight, the characters are sharply drawn, and Grace Kelly delivers one of her great performances and looks outrageous throughout. Now, Hitchcock doesn't use suspense through jump scares, but through patience and meticulous framing. Much parodied and borrowed from Rear Window is a brilliant introduction to Hitchcock and a great gateway into classic thrillers. Now, John Ford's The Searchers is widely considered one of the greatest westerns ever made, and for good reason, in all honesty. It tells the story of Ethan Edwards, a Civil War veteran, played here by John Wayne, who embarks on a years-long journey to find his kidnapped niece. Now, what makes Ethan such a great character is his complexity. He's a brave dude, of course. He's determined and loyal, yet he's also driven by a quite deep prejudice and personal demons. Now, for me, it's this blend of heroism and darkness that gives the film this vibe that sets it apart from many other westerns from that time. Now, for beginners, The Searchers offers a great introduction to the visual grandeur of classic Hollywood. Filmed on location in Monument Valley, its landscapes are naturally breathtaking, and John Ford's compositions are so carefully arranged that many modern directors still study them. Now, the story's emotional weight, its themes of family and obsession, and its moral ambiguity give the film its depth that many gunslinging tales of 1950s cinema couldn't really match. Now, watching The Searchers today reveals how the Western genre could be both action-packed and introspective. So, in the pantheon of classic comedies, Billy Wilder's Some Like It Hot is one of the funniest, sharpest and most effortlessly charming films ever made. Now, Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon here star as two musicians who go on the run after witnessing a mob hit, disguising themselves as women to join an all-female band, something I'm sure today's oversensitive, offended by everything society would probably struggle to accept. Anyway, their dynamic is pure comedy gold here, filled with quick wit, escalating chaos and perfect chemistry. Now, Marilyn Monroe as singer Sugar Cane brings an irresistible screen presence, but also quite an interestingly vulnerable character. Now, what makes the film ideal as a gateway to classic comedy hijinks is its lively energy and timeless humour. Now, the jokes still land, I think. The pacing's breezy, and the film's willingness to play with gender, identity and romance feel surprisingly modern if you're willing to go along for the ride. Now, Wilder's direction is clever without ever being pretentious, making it one of the most widely loved comedies in film history. Now, Some Like It Hot is a perfect reminder that classic cinema can be just as funny, bold and daring as anything made today, and that maybe sometimes the best place to start with old movies is simply with the ones that make you laugh. So together, I hope that these 10 films offer a vibrant and inviting snapshot of classic cinema through the golden age of Hollywood. You get a little taste of everything here, I think. Silent comedy, technicolor fantasy, film noir, groundbreaking drama, musical showmanship, suspenseful thrills, sweeping westerns, and zany comedy. Now, of course, to say that this is the tip of the iceberg is a gross understatement, but each movie here is not just historically significant, but genuinely entertaining, making each one perfect starting points for newcomers. Now, once you've experienced these movies, you'll have a strong foundation for exploring deeper into classic cinema and discovering, hopefully, some new favourites. Enjoy, and thanks for watching.